Yeah, so I'm Nicolas Roope, and I'm one of the founders of Poke, a London-based kind of digital creative agency. I studied fine art, kind of contemporary practice, and I just left, and I felt very disillusioned by the art world. I wasn't interested in being an artist and trying to operate within the art world. Didn't feel very sort of positive about it. I didn't think it was very real. So actually, initially, I wanted to be a fireman just to get all this bullshit out of my system. But then I thought, actually, I need a kind of some proper income, and then I kind of came down to London from Liverpool and just found myself with like some Photoshop skills doing some really well-paid work on what was then the kind of the beginnings of the sort of multimedia revolution, which was like a little kind of bubble in its own right. All these publishing companies making CD-ROMs to kind of reissue their titles, their books. So this is 1995. When we were founding Poke, we were sort of under quite a lot of pressure at some point. I can't remember why. There was sort of like we were doing the paperwork, so we basically had to come up with a name really, that afternoon. And we're in a coffee shop, and we were all just chatting about what it should be, and we were asking about, sort of talking about what we wanted it to represent and what it was, why we were doing it. And I can't remember, Ian and Simon were talking about, wanting to kind of poke the industry, and we want to sort of get back to the core stuff in this business, and show the world that there's another way of doing things, and there's a better way of doing stuff. And we need to kind of poke the industry. And then when poke came up as a word, we just liked it because it's an interactive thing. It has that sort of sense of us wanting to kind of it's a sort of intervention, but it's also if you get poked, you're sort of we're making you uncomfortable, and that's kind of the point. Everything we do sort of makes our clients a bit uncomfortable, which if it's not making them uncomfortable, it's probably not very good. Interactivity is about making connections between things, and creativity is about making connections between stuff. So all of the work you'll see on our site, all the work we do is effectively kind of putting things together and then trying to connect communities, like create relationships. So connectivity is at the core of what we do. What we believe is that the best culture and the best kind of structure for handling that, for dealing with those types of problems is a very collaborative culture, both internally and externally. So being able to collaborate really, really well between all the disciplines is absolutely paramount. This collaboration that we talked about, something that is not only about internal teams and other partners, it's also about the client relationship, and trying to sort of change the nature of that relationship to one that's, where we're working on things together and it's more like a partnership. But one thing that's really important to make that effective is not having enormous teams. We tend not to be on projects where we just do loads and loads and loads of meetings. It's much more. We try and keep it much more agile. We keep the team quite small at our end, as small as it can be, really, because making the team bigger just creates more interference, basically. So it's a hard thing to sell, because when projects get bigger, clients tend to want to see the bodies go up. They want to see like 20 people because it's a massive project. Obviously, we work. Technology is at the heart of what we do. So it's a kind of every minute of every day we're thinking in some way around technology, and doing good work and guiding clients through, navigating clients, their businesses and products and whatnot through this ever sort of changing landscape is a real challenge. And the main challenge is really about balancing insights around changing behaviour, because obviously for us behaviour provides the insights that we build our plans on, effectively. So it's really important. When everybody started using smartphones, we had to approach everything completely differently, because you had, and now we almost like start with the phone and then build out other things. So we kind of have to stay, and because the big changes are taking place very, very quickly. But then there's also this kind of these fashions, and this this kind of a lot of hype around certain approaches, certain techniques, certain technologies, and technology is very seductive and has that new gadgets, and it has this sort of very strong kind of novelty aspect to it. So it's very easy for people to get very carried away, like trying to do something because it sort of feels cool. It feels like it's really interesting to do this thing because, and we've seen it with like QR codes, augmented reality, like Second Life, and all these kind of things, these like crazy fashions that kind of come through. And actually, when you look back at those times, you probably 2 in 100 were actually really good ideas that really, exploited the possibilities of those, those technologies, and actually, delivered it in a way where, a big chunk of, the users could participate in it. Most of the time, it's like, it doesn't really make sense. So, I mean, so it's a massive issue for us, is sort of keeping that balance. It's one of the weaknesses that I think we have in the creative world is we're so vested in creative stuff, in making big, beautiful, ambitious things. It's difficult for us to imagine that small, very light, very easy things can have a great impact. And I think Twitter is almost like a Zen format. When it started, everybody was like, well, it's not that rich, it's not that spectacular, it's like really dry and really like minimal. How can that work? But it's actually the simplicity of it and the transferability and the, and actually the complexity that comes from the interrelationships, all the kind of hashtagging and all those practices. It actually becomes very rich through those things. And then obviously we see, particularly these kind of intense, changes that we've seen in the world. Twitter's always been right at the heart of it because things are so, so sort of contained. They just travel much faster and wider and quicker, and they're more to the point. And obviously it's not, it's not replacing everything by any means, but it feels like it's really kind of already very ingrained. What matters in communication ultimately is the impact, and however you get there, it's kind of irrelevant almost. And I think that's a really important thing for us, as pokers to resist, resist those seductions and really ask those questions about what's the best thing.
Whether taking the video, I think no.